All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much again for that. Just needed a bit to collect myself here, put things back together. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today's show is about you. It's about all of us, collectively. Now that we are awakened, what's next? And before we can get to the next level, we need to understand where we came from and where do we go from there. The title of today's show is a follow-up on the No More Secret series, and this is Series 2, Mary, Army, the Marines, and Mars, the Holy Red Sea. Before I get to Sevan to present his knowledge today, I just want to give the numbers out to call for the show, and the number is 347-996-5688, and please press 1 to put your hand up in order for me to take your call. And also you can furthermore post questions on the Blog Talk Radio of the chat box, and you can also post on the Resistance chat box. And for those who are new to the Resistance, you'll get more information by checking out the Resistance website at www.resistance2010.com, and there you will find the free copy and be able to download Sevan's book, The Code to the Matrix, which is highly recommended for those that need to be in the know. Okay, without further ado, here's Sevan, who's going to reveal this hidden knowledge. Mary, Army, the Marines, and Mars, the Holy Red Sea.
Wholeness and Balance vibration to everyone in the Resistance. And, of course, today is a very special day, and we have something phenomenal to deliver to you. We first and foremost wanted to send out Wholeness and Balance vibration to Japan, and the faction of also Resistance members in Japan that are experiencing the situation there. And, of course, today's conversation will be steered into that area so that we can discuss in depth what exactly is going on in our world and how to come to a solution. And I first wanted to begin today's conversation by removing all ideas of fear-mongering, all ideas of mind control, and things of that nature from our minds, because now we just don't have time for pondering back and forth what we're willing to accept. There is definitely something happening in our world, and it is much larger than what we can control personally on our own. And that is where we come in with neo-universalism, which is not just looking for what's common between all religions, but what's common within all species. And this is very important for our next level of ascension for the whole species. And the reason is because as we continue to operate as if we're separate, then we actually begin to tear ourselves apart as a collective. And that's actually what we're experiencing with our planet. And so what we wanted to basically get into today, and what I wanted to talk about, and first I wanted to say that I'm very happy to have not only Mr. Spirit Matter Gene, who's been here for about 3 weeks now, but also Mune, who's also come to the studio and has shared her knowledge and shared her abilities and has showed up to actually allow her activation in her mind of knowing that what she came to do to be able to come to fruition, which it has. And I would just encourage people, just from so many examples that we see at the Resistance, that there is something that you can do here and you can get involved, and it's about taking this to the next level. And by the end of today's show, one should fully be clear and balanced about exactly what they need to do to get to the higher level and how it's going to be very imperative for them to do that right now. And so the first part of what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to talk about these groups and these collectives, because in the beginning of this, if we really think about this, when we first began, we were escaping the hive mind. That's what we were. We had identified the hive mind as the Red Queen, and we had identified where people's minds were basically being mind controlled and tapped into from a false level, and that much of what we were being fed from a religious standpoint and a holistic standpoint with medicine and things of that nature were only things designed to actually destroy us. So we never want to forget that there is that force out there, even though many of us have graduated beyond that, is because that's what we teach here at the Resistance, is how to get beyond all of these things by first identifying them and then overcoming them. And this is found in many of the paths and many of the keys and tools to higher levels of knowledge. And so what was discovered is through the etymology of words, especially recently, like I've had a major revelation within etymology. And I would like everyone to understand that, again, language is like a cable itself, and the last word of a language is to connect it to the first word, and this would make a ring. And that's why languages are, in fact, rings. But when your ring does not connect, as you can see, they say the most sacred ring was a ring where the serpent was eating its tail, or the ring of Ouroboros was those that were the highest in the priesthood of the serpent wore these rings. But the ring was to signify one who was completely cycled, one who was what they call them, the cyclops, or one eye. It means you have a complete cycle in you, or a system that is complete, and you understand how to work with things from that system because it's complete. And this was mainly done in the language, and so that's why when you see in movies like Babylon or Battlefield 3000 with John Travolta, you see that there's one individual, because they're telling the whole Anunnaki story there's one individual that begins to learn the language of these beings, and that becomes the way that he can escape their impending disasters of just how they choose to carry themselves. But what we find in the language is we find that many people are confused about exactly what they're saying, especially when we start to add slang and things to our terms, that there's all sorts of beings that are evoked that come, what I've seen, mostly from the Hindu pantheism and also from the Egyptian pantheism, but many of the pantheisms in Africa and then many of the Orisha religions. So this means that literally when people are speaking, if you could slow everything down that they were actually saying, what you would really hear is them evoking energies over and over. So what that eventually became for me is it became that I needed to learn this language completely, and I found finally the root to this language itself, and I began to study that. And even though I was already quickened with a cipher in my mind of how to look at the languages, that's why it's always important to continuously study, because I came into more knowledge about what the language really means. Like the word Tron means throne. So it becomes very cohesive when you understand the language from a whole different level, but this is what people speak and evoke every day, and they play it like a game, but it really is something different. Like, for instance, the word NFL means Nephilim. That is the actual term for Nephilim. So when we see these larger football players who are clearly related to the Giants and Nak and the Philistines, or Hebron or LeBron, when we see these individuals, and whether they're aware of it or not, they connect to a lineage that gives them the bloodline of a fallen one. And so we can obviously see that the fallen ones are here. It's not really a concept of something that's supposed to be masterminding and brainwashing us. It's really something that's actually taking place on our dimension. So now we can maneuver into another level of thinking, which is to now adjust yourself as if there is a being that is more or less an advanced version of the human, because this is how the descendancies really work. And we were tapping into deeper the difference between a descendant and an ascendant. Because normally we say, well, we descended from these beings. Well, there's some of us that actually ascended from certain beings. And so we need to understand there's two lanes to this highway, and there always has been. And now what the earth is about to experience is there are individuals that came here to help them, but they didn't come outside. They came inside, meaning that the higher beings never showed up in spaceships externally. They showed up inside of us. And then they began to change us and teach us, man and woman, exactly what we were going to need to get to the next level of existence for those people who actually opened themselves up to that. And what we also faced also was the internal invasion. So everyone needs to understand that what really happened to this world was it basically was tesseract. Everything was inverted. It's inside out. And so when we keep asking ourselves, these higher beings, when are they coming to save us? When are they coming? It's when you activate the higher being inside. That's where it stays. It's inside of you. And the excuses and the reasons you give yourself why not to do that, even though our world is crumbling, it becomes just why the higher being won't come and save you. So this is what happens, and this is the grand deception itself of the Matrix, and those who got themselves attached to this type of knowledge of understanding how to do this to beings. Now, let's just get it very clear that there is a group of individuals that they've gotten so deep into a dark level of drinking energy that they can't even exist without having this energy. And it's like an addiction of any type of nature. And we experience several addictions on this dimension, but this is a grander addiction because of the size of the being in which you're dealing with. And so what it becomes is that it needs energy. And where we're really at now is that because the world has become defunct on energy, it's facing basically a corruption from within. When you look at people, you see that they're dying from within because they can't get any energy because they've been ingesting everything that's fake and artificial. And this is everything around us. This is the difference between artifact. It becomes the artificial. And so what happens is that when the artificial is rampant about the dimension and people are searching for something real and actual, when that happens, then that's where people gravitate to. And so we have to realize that once we begin to introduce these laws and rules and principles that were the original ones, meaning the organs, the universal laws and rules, meaning you have to take care of anything to bring forth or birth, or else it will reflect back on your own being. So understand that it's a quantum dilemma that we're dealing with, even with the higher beings that put us in the mix, for better lack of words, because we realize from our level of intelligence that there's an extreme gap between where we are in intelligence and where a lot of these other beings are. And so what we really want to talk about is we want to talk about these bands, because everyone has to realize that when I saw into the future, what I saw groups of individuals that were functioning. It was teams. Because what happens is the world has now got itself to a state where there's many individuals that are in the wrong bands and the wrong groups and the wrong gangs that are following a blind leader. And what's happening with them is that they're suffering the repercussions of what that blind leader is doing. And so what literally happens in this case is you have situations such as Japan where you have the people suffering for decisions that the government is making. And when you look deeper into it, because no one's willing to say and talk about it because they don't stand on principality, meaning that there are certain individuals here on this planet that have been given a right to speak against these beings, and they can't do anything about them. They love to say these are the prophets that come to the land to notify the people. But you always get to a stage where the people are not listening, and that's what exactly we're experiencing now. But every time the stage advances, we want to get more into being able for the prophet or the person who's giving the information to get more adept at giving that information. So it becomes an experience for everyone where the only thing that we have left here on this planet is for us to succeed, for it not to be one of the greatest pains ever. Meaning that if we actually bring this planet into a higher frequency, and I say if because it is because everyone's still there, it's still everyone has to still make that decision. You see, everyone has the ability to choose what they want to do. But when we do this, what we literally experience is the soothing that comes behind all the pain that's happened over the aeons that this has existed, where we began to feed off of ourselves. See, people always complain about the Nephilims and the Rephaims and the Illuminatis and all these individuals, but don't understand that this quantum problem exists within when we eat. Because if you look at the word meat, if you just take this apart, or actually let's look at the word meal. It's the easiest word to pull apart in grammatics. What you have is M-A-N-E-L. And what we know is that is a mammal and a serpent, ma-el. So what happens is that when you have a serpent man inside of one body, it really becomes a feeding frenzy between one side and the other that's happening on a quantum level. And so what literally has to happen is that we have to go back into history and to explain to individuals that, first of all, not all serpents were carnivores. In fact, most of the beings that were on this planet originally and even in the galaxy were not carnivores at all. And many beings had already understood how to feed off of a pranic energy that was regenerating within themselves from much more subtle energies that were easier to reproduce rather than plasmic fields. And so what happens is that we have these gangs now, which is Genghis, and he's a Khan. Okay? And the Khans are the kings that came to this earth. They started the coin, which is the currency. It's a two-sided thing. It's like a monkey's paw. It's like you can use it, but it marks you a certain kind of way. They were smiths, which also means cane, which they taught man an advanced version of how to metal craft so that they can understand how to graduate a society into industry, which is the indust, meaning that you came from dust, but the Indus Valley where most of the slaves were when they began to cultivate this planet. And it's been one of those things that when you work for something in whatever part of the universe, you get paid. So what was happening to many of the beings that were working then, even though they were enslaved, was they actually inherited the territory that they were working on. So what you actually look at in history is you always see the slaves end up getting more numerous than whoever their masters are, and then they overthrow their masters and they end up owning everything that their masters originally had. It's happened so many times through history, so let us open our eyes. So we see these gangs, and there's another word that actually means the same thing like a gang, but it's called tan. And it's spelled T-H-A-N, and it means also a gang or a binding or a group of individuals. And this word is present within the word Leviathan. And it's important for people to understand that, as this episode is called, It Came from the Sea, that the sea itself, or the water expanse, or the mare, as they call it, the mare, was what this planet pretty much existed in the time that most people are trying to access. They want to access this primordial time in the planet, and what you're looking at that point before Atlantis, meaning before land, was all water. And you had beings that were known as Mu traveling through those waters, and that was what was here. And then so when the entry of the next level of things came in, it came in as something to push back the waters, as it says, to drain the marshes and to have husbandry, which means to start to train the animals and breed and etc. So we see this process taking place, but yet everyone wants to be away from it. They want to say, oh, that was them, never realizing that when you look at your last name, it was you. So now it's time to get to the point where we realize, well, what do we have to do next because of all this imbalance that we've caused within ourselves? We keep moving. Pan becomes Leviathan, becomes these priests that actually understand and knew about the energy from their father. And they began to utilize that energy for what we now know as evil, which is a current that is so strong that anyone putting themselves in it for too long experience very negative things. So we go in and we find also another word called banned, which also means to not do when something is banned. But what it also means is to put another group of individuals together. Now, all of these etymologically I can pull apart and show you what beings they correspond to, but we don't even need to go that deep. We have, at this point, for people to get a clear understanding about, there's another word here, band and binding, which means to tie yourself together. Now, what happened was, is they say that the fallen angels bound themselves by oath on the Mount Hermon, which is where the word harmony also comes from, which also means everyone's together. And they bound themselves by the oath. But there's another word that I woke up out of my sleep like 3 days ago, screaming in my mind, chain, which actually just was Cain, that the CH was pronounced K, and you have everything else there. And there was another word that said that we were linked, in other words, to Cain, and it caused a band, and this band is a wavelength, a frequency. And as long as we continuously tie into it, then we will reap what it's sowing, because we don't even understand what it's doing. And so this brought me all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, all the way back to the garden where it said that man had a tree there. And the gods were like, you shall not eat from the tree, because from that point you'll know between good and evil, and then you will become like us. But when you look deep into what that really means, what it really means is that the gods were actually saying, if this man knows knowledge at all, then he'll know the commands that we're giving him are not right or wrong. Basically, so he'll know all of the commands we're giving him are either wrong. Like if we say, man, go get us this, he'll start thinking, well, why am I going to get this? He'll start thinking, well, I don't want to kill that cow. I don't want to sacrifice that cow. And so that was what they were attempting to hold back from man, is just knowing either to be an opportunist, man and woman to be an opportunist, like, well, I'm not going to do what they say they're going to do, but that doesn't mean I'm any better. And that's really where most of the Nephilim took their knowledge. I mean, the Nephilim took their knowledge of saying, okay, well, I'm done really with Father because Father is weak and he's been castrated. But we're not going to be any better than Father, and we're going to rule over this planet that's here, and we're going to just take the spoils. And this has been the attitude of our species. Like I noticed, I looked at many YouTube videos on the Japan situation last night, but the thing that was worse than the videos were the comments. that the comments coming from across the world were so racial and hateful back and forth. And it all started really with one person's racial comment. And then from there, it just spewed all into, you have millions of people watching these videos, because it's interesting. If you want to be a watcher, you look at when there's 3 million videos, 3 million views on something that just took place, and then you drag and drop all of the comments, and then you put them all into a database, and then you have the database start pulling all the words apart, and you see the negative words versus the positive words, and there you have where the current is. So this is where we kind of lost this ability to be able to spread out and to think fast. It was like a quantum thinking, where we knew how to come with a solution way before it turned into a problem. That's why I'm now tapping into this whole introvert thing, and the website received the introversion itself. But remember, what you need to do is you first need to find one field, one constant field. And then once you find that field, you can calculate everything that you're experiencing based on the opposite field, and that's where you find your balance. And so what we're going to do is we're going to open up today, and we're going to talk about what would actually happen. We're going to go a little further, and I'm going to open up my mind and say, okay, well, how would this all happen anyway? If our planet, let's just talk about every single scenario here. If our planet is experiencing so much turmoil right now because of the mental, physical, and spiritual condition of the beings that live upon it, that it has to rent itself asunder, that means the only way to correct it would actually be to balance enough percentage, and you could calculate this percentage based upon the amount of people that are actually on the planet. But that number would be the amount of people that you need to change. So let's talk about this. So if we took an equation and we know what percentage it's going to take for everyone else to change, it's like the 100th monkey syndrome, but times whatever the amount of people we have. If we found an actual population of people that were that large and we changed all those people, then we could actually change the whole world. So that's where you have it. For those who are the idealists of changing the world, that's what you would need to do. Because when you activated those individuals in the higher states of consciousness, it will wave over everyone else. So that's case closed. We've been working on that constantly around the clock, enlightening the species, and we have multiple formats of doing that. It's just going a little slow. So the next stage is, if we're all released from our bodies, where will we be going? We have what appears to be a risk, because when people die, no matter how much we love them, we can contact them just a little bit, but after a while they start to fade away. And even when we do make contact, for most of us, it doesn't appear as if it's straight contact from the individuals. Only the individuals that have that facility open, that they get a lot of contact from different spirits that are dismembered, but may not even be here, and may just be an imprint of those individuals, but they can see them. But all in all, it's not a constant, hey, it's great over here, can't wait till you get here, etc. There's a disconnection. So we should stop playing games about us imagining what's going on the other side and just get right down to the nitty-gritty. So what I find is that in the ancient writings, that what you really did have was some type of shepherd thing going on when a bunch of souls came out of the body, meaning a larger, grander soul, vehicle, ship, etc., was already formed, and the other ones would attach themselves to it as if they were like also like what you see, a physical ship that has several attachments, one GPS device, one device that does, etc. So basically a person's abilities is attached to it, and it gives this whole vehicle or body the ability to move throughout space and time and all the rest of the stuff that we don't even know about. And so what I started to realize is that, well, what can we do to ensure that we end up in a reality? If we have people going into the reality now, like the ocean just swallowed up a great deal of people just now if no one was watching. So how can we make sure that these individuals get to a better reality? Can we take that responsibility upon ourselves, or are we going to continue to remain in the Saturnalian I'm a child stage? Meaning that the actual religion of this world appears to be Saturnalian all the way around the globe. And I can really take it apart for people, but I'll just tell you, it's present. And the thing about the Saturnalian religion is the actual person is encouraged to remain in a childlike phase to where they're depending on their father to do every single thing for them. And this then leaves them very susceptible to abuse and things of that come into the Saturnalian way of life. And so what we have to remove is we have to remove this whole idea that something else is supposed to be doing something, whether it's God or whether it's Ascended Master. It's not doing it. To me, doing it is when you think of the high point of your mind of how this reality can be, you should already understand that if there was a higher being that was doing it, it would have already morphed it into better than what you were thinking. What you have in control of this environment as a collective is a lower state of consciousness. So we can close the book on that because we've seen enough of that. It's affecting our planet. The lower state of consciousness has us using oil when we could even use hydrogen. The lower state of consciousness has us using medicines that will make us, not using medicines that can make us perpetual even though those medicines are readily available. And so that's where we have to graduate over that. No one is attempting to manipulate our mind except for us. If we imagine that there's nothing going on, but every day there's something happening, that's insanity. And so every time you don't do anything, meaning every time that you don't react to what you're experiencing, it shows exactly how much you're still alive. And if the whole idea here is to turn everyone into zombies, we'll see if they react to every single situation that keeps happening, like when Cradle Mutwa got his necklace stolen. I felt like personally that people should have reacted and did something because he delivered the information that gave a lot of people the opportunity to get to a higher level of consciousness. But there wasn't even a word about it. So what the resistance society is, resistance is tired of this type of behavior. And this is where I kind of went away this weekend. I wanted the Linden Honors. I went away for a while. And I thought about it and I said, you know what? We're going to just go into this so strong that no one's ever seen nothing like it before, period. That we are going to break the sound, space, time barrier in everyone's face. I already know you have really three different kinds of factions. You have the people who always knew, which are like the governments, the higher levels of the governments and the military, their technology and all that, they already knew. Like I'm here with a little measly GB4000 and I'm watching the spectrum of frequency and light expand itself into my mind. So what have they done? See, that's the thing that we have to always be able to do is understand that even though you're just getting the memo, doesn't mean the memo wasn't out a long time ago. So you're almost scrambling because of the situation that's happening in Earth to get certain levels of knowledge so that you can make the right type of transition for yourself, because you should already have come to the realization that the transitions are somewhat just as fractal as this planet. Meaning that if you're dreaming of multiple yous on different realities, that's just how many are out there. They're just as unknowledgeable of you as you are of them, but they can be pulled and gathered back in. And what I experienced during a method that we're now calling the kick, it's a technique that we've been using at the clinic where one sits and goes through 3 levels of the sauna, and to get rid of the impurities and the other state of consciousness, wiping self down with salt and lemon, and then when getting to a certain temperature, dropping oneself into a cold tub. And that the period that ensued where you were like, was actually the period that is at the top of the pendulum point, which is the space of no time. And in that period, you can manifest. So many things I saw there. And I felt multiple me's, like when I would go into the water, I felt like multiple me's going in. And then when I would come up, I would think I was coming out, but it was another me coming out. So it was like a elastic type of effect or a silhouette type of effect. And I realized I was collecting more me's across time. And as I've been doing this, I started to see many things like, here's another situation about what was taking place in what we call the garden. Anytime that something is placed before us, there's always the knowledge of what's going to happen next. I think that when these beings of the Bible say, hey, man, don't touch, or woman, don't touch that tree, it really means, watch, they're going to touch the tree. I already seen this. I'm nonlinear. Because the Time Lord thing is something that I've been able to do even sleeping. And so really the only thing humbling yourself allows you to do is just imagine where everything else higher than you really is. And so if you've seen the past, present, and futures, and I get many emails about it from different people, and it's eerie. We know we can see past, present, and future. Do we not think that the first beings that actually told us don't do this and don't do that already had seen what we were going to do? And so this is where I'm talking about is starting to collect your knowledge and understand the ark has to be built. People have to start coming back together on a spiritual level. We can connect with each other through a great expanse of this dimension, and we're now going into that now. And the individuals that want to do that, they're allowed to come on in. And the individuals that don't want to, as I always say, disbelievers block their own way. But it doesn't appear like there's too much time here left. I would pretty much say everyone's saying that, they're counting on 2012, but, I really believe something else is going to be taking place here. So here's what's happening. I have another recording. It appears that today's show was scheduled kind of strange because of something that happened with Blog Talk Radio. And so there's actually only 90 more seconds in this call. But I do have another recording that me and Terry recorded just before this conversation. I'll be uploading that to the Resistance right away and allowing that to loop. And in the meantime, we'll just see what we can do to fix this switchboard. And that's pretty much it. But I have a really good feeling that everything that was supposed to be conveyed today has been conveyed. We're going to get a lot deeper into breaking those chains and breaking those bonds with things that are not going to get you anywhere, and how to also establish a very deep connection with those things that will, but how to be able to use a deeper cipher and a deeper way of looking into things even beyond intuition, or combining all of your abilities to understand exactly where you need to be at. And I just wanted to say we're here for everyone outside of time, inside of time, and that this is something that we have to know that with Japan, it happened within us, and it is a cleansing. And to what's going to happen ultimately with this planet, we will go into it bravely. We will not go into it with fear, and we will hold hands together, those who are of light frequency. And so I want, once again, to send wholeness and balance vibration to everyone, and that's going to do it for today.